and go ahead.
All right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Our mission. Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting parents whose children have passed. Through support and resources offered, we aspire to help individuals become shining light parents, meaning a shift from a state of emotional heaviness to one of hopefulness and greater peace of mind. HPH goes a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence in a non-dogmatic way. HPH affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and encourage open dialogue. Attendance at this meeting is voluntary. We hope that participants will learn from and share with each other. Discussions here are confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Zoom meetings run by leadership are not confidential. These meetings typically feature guest presenters and are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members worldwide can watch and benefit. Neither type of HPH meeting is designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers, allowing parents to learn about many possible ways to heal. This includes presenters covering progressive topics such as afterlife evidence and connecting with children who have passed. The views expressed by our guest speakers may or may not reflect the opinion of Helping Parents Heal leaders and members, so we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally.
Thank you. That was perfect, as always.
Always a pleasure.
Good job. And I just want to say very quickly that Jeff is a board member of Helping Parents Heal. He also helps with Helping Fathers Heal. His wife, Lynn, is the head of our Caring Listeners, and she also does so much else for Helping Parents Heal, including the book club. And so just wanted to say that. So yeah, we can all give them a big hand. I see some people in the waiting room. So now we're going to switch gears, and we're going to be talking about these two wonderful people who are such a huge part of Helping Parents Heal right now. And I am so honored that Linda and Earl made the trip to be able to come to this meeting. So what we're going to do first is have Christy come up, who's also an affiliate leader. She's also in charge of Art for the Heart, which is an amazing group. Introduce Reverend Sue, who's a very close friend of hers. Would you like to come up? Sure. Thank you so much. Yay, Christy.
Can I put this back here?
Go ahead.
It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce one of my best friends, Sue Frederick, Reverend Sue Frederick. Sue is a channel, clairvoyant, claircognizant, and clairaudient who receives wisdom from guides and departed loved ones to help others heal grief and find purpose. With her powerful intuition, Sue uses sacred numerology and mystical information to facilitate access into a divine lens where our soul's wisdom is available 24/7. Sue has been a guest on hundreds of radio shows and interviews, featured in major magazines and newspapers, and is the author of more than 11 books. After suffering a tragic loss, Sue became a sacred numerology practitioner since 1981. She brings a deeply enlightened perspective to using numbers as navigational tools for deciphering the soul's journey and connecting to departed loved ones. You arrived here with a sole intention to live your greatest potential. As an ordained Unity minister, lifelong intuitive, past life and in-between lives soul regression therapist, master numerologist, intuitive coach, and spiritual guide, Sue has helped thousands of people realign their soul with their soul's purpose and connect to departed loved ones in therapeutic conversations. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, CNN, Real Simple, Yoga Journal, Natural Health, Complete Woman, Fit Yoga, and Nexus magazines. Please visit her website, SueFrederick.com. Thank you.
Yay,
Sue.
Sue.
You all always make me cry here, especially you, Christy. Thank you. Well, it's my honor to introduce my dear friend, Dr. Linda Backman, who also trained me in soul regression therapy. She is featured on Coast to Coast AM and Gaia TV. Dr. Linda Backman is an expert teacher, regression therapist, and licensed psychologist with 45 years of private practice experience, including over 25 years guiding soul regressions. Linda was trained by soul regression pioneer, Dr. Michael Newton, and they worked together training other therapists for 3 years. Linda has conducted thousands of past life and between lives soul regressions in person and remotely. Linda founded the Raven Heart Center and the Training Institute in Boulder, Colorado, my hometown, in 1997. She teaches regularly worldwide. She also provides spiritual mentoring and psycho-spiritual grief sessions on Zoom. Linda's books are Souls on Earth, The Evolving Soul, and Bringing Your Soul to Light. She is an international expert in understanding how reincarnation plays a pivotal role in our personal growth and relationships. Linda's website is ravenheartcenter.com. Come on up, Dr. Linda.
We're going to trade back and forth, but I want to tell you why I'm really here. Okay. And to, how do I make it simple? So I too am a shining star parent, and my husband Earl and I have 2 living children and 1 on the other side. And when we were in our, long time ago, when we were in our middle 20s, we were pregnant with our second baby. And that was a challenging pregnancy of, oh, I'm gonna miscarry today. Oh, no, I think it's okay. Oh, no, today I'm gonna miscarry. Oh, it's okay. And we experienced that from about 8 to 10 weeks until 26 weeks of pregnancy. And our beloved second child, who we named Adam, was born living, breathing, and passed a few hours later. So I didn't understand grief. I was not a psychologist back then. That's probably a good one point to add, not that it matters, but I was not. And I fell into a classic grief process. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know why I felt so horrible. I used to describe it as, I feel like someone took one of those great big wool army blankets, soaked it in a tub of water, and laid it on top of me. Like, oh, I just can't move. I just feel so weighted down. And it took therapy. It took a number of dear friends. It took time. It took time. So anyway, fast forward without telling you my whole life story. Fast forward, I became a licensed psychologist through the basically death and passing and transition of Adam. And I was a conventional psychologist until about 31 years ago, when a dear, dear colleague of mine, a man with whom we built a group practice up in Flagstaff, Arizona. We were living in Flagstaff at the time. Earl was a dean at NAU. My dear colleague, whose nickname was Bud, passed at the age of 32 from mesothelioma, from a type of lung cancer. And none of us in the group were spiritual. None of us understood soul, reincarnation, access to the soul. Bud transitioned, and within about 48 hours, he started talking to me from the other side. And, part of me wanted to say, OMG, what the heck is going on? And where are you? And how does this happen? I knew like a fingernail's worth about reincarnation. Bud also began to show me past lives we'd shared. And so again, I still thought, maybe I need my own therapist and meds and a padded cell or, whatever. And so, this is a completely true story. I've told it a zillion times. So my husband, who's sitting in the back row in this room, for those of you that can't see him, so I said to Earl, I've got to tell you what's going on. And if you think your wife has lost her mind, then you can just say, you think I've lost my mind. And so Earl sat down. We'd already been married 20 or 25 years at this time. Earl sat down. Earl knew Bud well. They were golfing friends and lunch friends. And I started relating to my husband what I was experiencing. And I kind of thought his eyes would roll back in his head and he'd just go, what the heck are you talking about? You know, this makes no sense. But he didn't. And I could get him to come up here and tell the rest of the story. But Earl was calm. And I said, why are you so calm? Don't you think this is just weird stuff? And he just calmly said no. And so I said, why not? Why don't you think this is strange? And here's what he said. He said, I guess I repressed what happened to me as a child. I said, what are you talking about? I did not know him as a child. And Earl said, now I remember. Earl's like 45 years old at the time, when he remembers this. He said, now I remember that as a boy, I'd lay outside in rural Oregon where I grew up. I'd watch the clouds go by in the sky, and I remembered my past lives in detail. Earl is far more intuitive than I am. I didn't know that. And so Earl said, I've always known we have a soul. I've always known the soul is immortal. I've always known we have access to both our memory as a soul, but to our loved ones. And Earl said, I don't think this is weird at all. If you want to go learn about this, go for it. So that's what opened me up to spiritual work. The last thing I'll say, and this really pulls at my heartstrings, I've done a lot of speaking about grief and loss and the other side and that sort of thing. And I think it's Reverend Sue, who connected me to HPH. Because I would speak at times to groups of people, grieving and all types of grief programs and that sort of thing. But never in those programs did they focus on, only the body's gone. But we have access, constant access. And that's when and I really mean this, that's when I fell in love with HPH and what Elizabeth has created. And because I have no doubt whatsoever that the soul of our loved ones, in particular our children, are accessible. So that's really why I'm here. Yeah.
That's
Okay.
Beautiful. Can I just add one quick thing?
Sure.
My skirt's gonna come off. It's Elizabeth and the children. It's not me. I just want everyone to understand that I wasn't expecting to do this at all. This is not something that I was looking forward to one day, to get up and start a group for parents who have children who have transitioned. But it's so fulfilling. And so I just want to make sure everybody understands it's the kids, it's all of your kids who created this group. So, and your son as well, Adam. So anyway, thank you for saying that.
Yeah. I mean, it's the truth, so it needs to be said.
And you all know my story, but it was my first husband, Paul, who crossed when I was 29 years old, that was in bed with me the night after he crossed and changed my understanding of reality. So you may have lost partners and parents as well. So they are also still communicating with you and cheering you on. Linda and I and Elizabeth can promise you that. There is no death of the spirit, and the soul is the most powerful part of our essence. It is who we really are. And one of the things we wanted to start talking about today is, what is our higher self? Because both Linda and I talk about how we have a big part of our soul that's still in the divine realms, that has our wisdom and our answers to every question we have. And then we squeeze down into these little physical bodies in this physical world, and we hit that forgetfulness of forgetting that we are at the core beautiful divine beings. And our children who cross, our partners, our parents, our loved ones, they get back to the other side beyond the physical and they go, oh, wow, let's help our loved ones wake up to this. And this is why we get so many visits and signs. My own husband, Paul, who crossed, he's been my lifelong teacher. He'll come to me and say, this is what you need to teach now. You know, you need to teach more about how there's no suffering of the soul. And all of your children are always trying to help you all realize what is next in your learning journey. So, do you want to talk about higher self?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many things to say about higher self. So I'll just say a couple of things. Because, and Sue and I both guide regression, and what we know from guiding clients in soul regression is that when we guide the client to discover a past life and then come to the end of that past life, then what we hear time after time after time with various clients is what happens when we transition. So I think it's important, let me just say some things about that, and we could spend the whole morning and I could share all kinds of stories about that, but because all of you are Shining Star parents, and all of you are dealing with how to live life on this side with your child on the other side. I mean, the bottom line is, for the person who's passing, their soul energy it's like autopilot. And it doesn't matter at all how they passed. It has nothing to do with whether it's a long-standing illness, or it's a motorcycle accident, or it's someone takes their life. It doesn't matter. When the cardiopulmonary functions of the body cease, the slice of soul, it's a slice, it's a portion, it's a holographic aspect of their soul. That aspect of soul just exits out of the non-functioning human body and begins its automatic journey. And I've listened to clients over and over and over describe this. And some of the clients have never listened to me, never listened to Sue, never read our books. They don't necessarily know. And it's almost like I hate to call it a homing pigeon, but it's kind of like a homing pigeon that elevates into the higher realm and then reconnects with their higher self. So the higher self of your child, when your child was alive, we're always soul and body, soul and spirit, at all times. That higher self is the totality of the experiences of any of us, in this case, our children. And so that slice of soul just sort of reintegrates back into the higher self, and that's what you're accessing when you connect with your children. That's them. That's all the memories, all the experiences. Sometimes it's an actual, when I guide regression, sometimes it's an actual image. When a client connects with their higher self, sometimes the image the client receives is that favorite shirt, that favorite hat, that favorite, whatever it is, necklace around their neck. It's like, well, why? Does the higher self have all those accoutrements that they're wearing? Well, no. But the higher self knows how to indicate to you that it's who you're seeking to connect with. And that's why their image appears that way.
And I also just want to add that all of us also leave our bodies while we're still in the lifetime. And whether it's through a dream vision that you might have where you're with your child all night and you know that it's real, yes, you have left most of your soul. There's still some in your body, or you would have crossed over, but you've lifted up more into those higher realms because your soul wanted to be more physically present with your departed. And those dreams and those out-of-body experiences are so visceral and so real. I know all of you have had them, and they're such a gift and they're such a blessing. And we can have them while we're meditating. The only thing that keeps us from having those experiences a lot is our monkey mind trying to be logical, trying to talk us out of that. Oh, that's not logical. Or you wake up in the morning and you go, oh, I was with my child, and your mind goes, no, that wasn't real. So be very aware of your left brain logic mind trying to convince you that those experiences aren't real. Because I'll tell you what, the older I've gotten, the more aware I am of how much as spirit we spend time out of the body before we cross. And whenever you're grieving, that is one of the greatest gifts that your beloved is giving you, the out-of-body experience, to remind you of who you are and that they are with you. Should we talk about our pre-birth agreements?
Yeah, actually, maybe this, I was going to make a quick comment, but this probably fits with pre-birth agreements. So, pre-birth agreements are all different. You know, it's just like we're all different. You know, we all look different from each other. There are aspects of our lives that are similar, and there are aspects of our lives that are the same. So, pre-birth agreements, it's complicated. Before we come into body, we create a plan. And I like to make it as almost as human seeming, yet it's happening in the higher realm, it's happening in the spiritual realm. So before we come into body, and I'm, you know, where this information comes from is for me, having guided thousands of regression clients where they're telling me how they planned their current life. So before each of us planned our current life, before each of our children planned their current life, we sort of sat down and had a meeting. We sat down at the soul level. We sat down almost like around a conference table. Think about it this way. And one or more guides, we all have spiritual guides. And when we're in body, obviously some of our spiritual guides are loved ones on the other side. And some of our spiritual guides are not loved ones from current life. It's a mix. So we sit down usually with a team of guides and we begin to discuss, so, okay, what's this next upcoming incarnation going to look like? Am I going to be tall? Am I going to be short? Am I going to be light skinned, dark skinned? You know, where am I going to be born? Am I going to be born in the United States or France? You know, what are my skills going to be? Now, you might imagine sometimes we plan into body and not be, nothing's perfect, but, and not be more than average intelligence, or maybe even over, you know, how we measure that, lower than average intelligence, or have a physical malady, have, we decide to come in with things like ADHD, or I have a grandchild diagnosed with ADHD, that's a long story. I think some of that for a reason. Sometimes it's to teach others. Sometimes it's for that soul to advance because they're going to have to walk that journey. But we decide to come into body. So, and I'm sure Sue has more to say about pre-birth agreements. I'll just jump in here because this came up the other evening when we were all together, and we were talking about hits, downloads that we all get. You know, you're spending your day, and all of a sudden you start getting an intuitive download. So I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago, I started thinking about Adam. Adam was born and passed on April 24th, 1972. So I started thinking about my father's father, my paternal grandfather, who I adored and respected, and he was a very cool individual. Well, my grandfather, who I called Zeta, that was my term of endearment, that's the Yiddish word for grandfather. My Zeta passed on April 24th, 1967. No, 1967, yes. So I started thinking, now I happen to be married to someone who's very intuitive, okay? So I kept thinking, okay, April 24th, April 24th. Now Sue might have something to say about this when it comes to not sacred geometry, but numerology. So I started wondering, what might be the connection between my Zeta, whose name was Jacob, and our son Adam. So I asked our guides, I said, okay, spiritual guides, am I just making this up? And they said, oh no, Linda, you're not just making this up. I said, well, okay, well, come clean. What's the deal here? And they said what I kind of suspected. And this happened, so we can talk more about this as we go along this morning. Jacob, my Zeta, and the soul of our son Adam are the same soul. And so I'm putting that out to you guys because, and you guys that are online and all of you sitting in the room, because these are things to think about too. Often there's purpose in such things when the same soul comes into our family more than once. So that's also a pre-birth agreement.
So I just want to address the question that parents and everyone who's grieving always has, which is, how could I have possibly made an agreement or a plan that my beautiful loved one would cross, my child would cross before me, or my child would cross so painfully, or in my case, my beautiful young mountain climbing husband would die of colon cancer in his early 30s. So the thing I think it's so important to remember is when we're having the tea party in the divine realms and creating our soul plans, we're not in our human minds. And the truth is, so many spirits have told me, you just have no pain when you're in the divine realms. And so the concept of suffering is kind of an abstract concept. And so we sit around, I always joke, that you're having tea with your family of loved ones, your posse, and everybody's happy and everybody's feeling completely loved and loving. And you go, let's have an accelerated growth journey down there. Because we really want to learn and evolve and become teachers and helpers. And we know the world is in trouble down there. People forget that they're divine beings. So let's drop in and be helpers. And every one of you said that, especially Elizabeth, especially Linda. And you all said, I want to go down there and make a difference. And so your beloved child or your beloved partner stood up and said, I love you so much that I will help you do this. I'll break your heart open so that you go on that awakening journey. And from your soul's perspective, not your human mind, you all toasted to that idea, said it was a wonderful plan, and you jumped into this life. Now, it's no surprise that as you get here, you forget who you are because we're talked out of it constantly. If you're dreaming in school about a spirit in the schoolyard, like I would be doing, the nuns would go, Sue, face forward, look at the teacher, think about what she's saying. I mean, I look back at my childhood and I think, gosh, I was hardly on the earth in my childhood. I don't know how I survived it, but I do know that spirit was talking to me and that kind of reminding me of what I'm here for, and that has been happening to all of you. And even in your deepest, darkest moments of grief, you have not been alone. You have not been abandoned. Those beautiful departed loved ones have been wrapping their arms around you. The angelic beings are coming to help you lift up. We get the myth here that we are all alone and that our loved ones are gone and that life here is tragic and random. There is nothing here that happens that is random. I can promise you that. It's the first lesson that Paul taught me when he crossed. He crossed over and instantly started teaching me the real meaning of divine order. He said, every single thing that happens on earth has a purpose to help you wake up to your divine higher self. And that's been his lifelong message and gift to me. So when you're sitting there thinking, I couldn't have possibly planned this, of course not your human self, but our divine selves remember the purpose of it. And that's the part of us that we remember in our meditation, in our silence, when we're in nature, when we open our hearts and love on one another. We ascend back to that. I love you guys. Okay, go ahead, Linda.
Yeah, this is the fun part when Sue and I decided to do this. It's just like we knew that bouncing off each other was the easiest and best thing to do. Think more, let me say a little bit more about pre-birth agreements. And I wrote this list. You can see me staring down at this piece of paper. And so, I don't know, last week or something, I sent a whole long list of questions to Sue. It's like, well, what do you think about this? What, shall we talk about that? And she said, sure, let's do the whole thing. So, one of the things I wrote, I'll just read this to you and then let me dive in and talk about it. And I'm assuming we'll get to the point of Q&A, because Q&A is always in my opinion, the most important part of anything like this, because then you guys get to ask your questions, and all of you, including those on the chat. So here's what I wrote. So, for Sue and I to talk about. Can pre-birth agreements shift within a lifetime, such as doorways we can choose? Okay? Are there doorways we can choose? My understanding is yes, that how can I say this? We come into body with a life plan, okay? And it isn't just, am I going to be born in, Arizona versus New York, or, whatever it might be. It's various things like, so let me dive into reincarnation here for a minute. What's the purpose of reincarnation? Why do we live one life to the next? And trust me, having guided regression for years and years and years, I have absolutely no doubt that we've lived time after time after time after time. And that's another piece that fits with what Sue is talking about, is that when we get down here, then it's easy to only have a human perspective. It's easy and understandable, especially when we've had a child transition, to just say, this is the worst nightmare in the whole wide world. It's just a complete nightmare. We're meant for our children to bury us, not us to bury our children. So, first of all, why might we decide that, before we come into body, why might we decide that we're not going to live what we as humans think is a normal lifespan? Which, from a spiritual perspective, what does that even mean? Because normal lifespan has to do with down here in these physical bodies. So at times, we create a life plan to come into body and live, in Adam's case, because it's my understanding and has been for years, Adam did not plan to stay. He came in our case, and this is not everyone's case, he came in to, Sue referred to Paul in the same sort of thing, it's just a slightly different version. He came in to teach me and to teach Earl. He came in to, I might say, soften us into the reality of we don't control our lives, and to learn what grief is all about, and then to be able to teach others, okay? So sometimes we come into body and there's a plan that we may leave by the time we're 37 years old. Is that permanently embedded in our life plan? No. Sometimes it happens that way, and sometimes it doesn't happen that way. But then the question is why? Because I'm assuming that would be the question in some of your hearts and minds. Why? Well, there are all kinds of explanations for why. One would be, there are times when a soul contract, when a life contract and intentions is satisfied in 37 years. For some of you, think about your child. Think about their impact on the world, on people, on others, on your family. And crazy as it may seem, again, from a down here in the hard reality of humanness, I didn't expect that, nor did I want that, if you're the parent or the sibling or the grandparent or the loved one. But it is true, based on my work with clients, it is true that sometimes I've taken care of what I came to take care of. And I'm finished with this particular incarnation. Now, it does happen that at times, I talked about that a moment ago, about my Zeta and our Adam, your child might come back into body, might, as your grandchild, as your best friend's child, as a nephew, a niece. That does happen. And you might look at that newborn baby and you just get this incredible intuition. Oh, I know this soul. I know this child. And that does happen, okay? So why? What's that about? What does that mean? I know I'm going off on all kinds of tangents here. When we're a soul, we belong, I love Sue's term, and I forget to use it until I hear Sue use it, our soul posse. I call it our soul pod, and Sue calls it a soul posse, all the same thing. When your soul is created, when your soul is conceived in the higher realm, you belong to a small group of souls called your soul pod or your soul posse. Those are the souls you have more lives with than any other souls. And then there's think about a stem of grapes. And then, on a stem of grapes, there's your grape on the stem, and think about that as your soul pod or your soul posse. Next to that on the stem, immediately next to that, on the same stem, are other soul posses. So you incarnate the next, I always have a hard time figuring out how to say this, you incarnate the next most frequently with the members of the adjacent soul posses. So Earl's my oldest child, our living child. Joel is in the same soul pod that Earl and I are in. Now, with your life partner, you're not always in the same pod. So please don't make that assumption. An adjacent, so we have a daughter born after Adam, and she's in the adjacent posse. Okay, so think about, because I think this helps us deal with transition and loss, that you're always connected, and you might meet the soul of your child in body, or you might not, but you might meet them again. So one more quick thing I realized I didn't talk about, doorways. There are doorways, and then sometimes they're not going to open. And then there are doorways of transitioning that are opened for a reason. Okay.
Well, I think I want to quickly just add a little bit to what Linda was saying, but I also think it's really important that we talk about the 3 different types of souls, because I know that parents always wonder, is their child the IP soul, the earth-based soul, or the angelic realm soul? So we will get to that in a moment. I just had an experience in my own life of coming to a possible soul exit point, and I think this is what Linda was talking about. I believe, from what I've heard from Spirit and with clients, is that we have a few possible exit points, and then we have a hard exit. And the hard exit is non-negotiable. And I really want you all to understand that, because if your beautiful child left at a young age, it does not mean that they had a choice there. What I've heard from these children's spirit is that those were hard exits. Children's souls would not be able to navigate that kind of a choice point, knowing how devastated their family would be. So it's only when we're older, like me, that we can maybe possibly have a negotiation about staying. If your child left early, they had completed their beautiful soul journey here. The agreement was done. So there was no, why didn't they stay? What could I have done differently? I really want you to know that. They were absolutely complete. Now, when you all have a moment, and also many of the clients I work with, they say, my child always told me things like, I don't feel like I'm gonna grow old. I don't feel like I'm gonna be here, when such and such a thing happens. I know that you had that experience with Morgan and Tess, and that is their soul's wisdom knowing that they had a hard exit approaching. And I would even add that from working with spirits, I know that sometimes a child will take their own life, but that is because they have sensed completely that hard exit coming. And maybe that hard exit would have happened in a car accident or some other way, but their own intuitive knowingness just knew this is the end of my journey here. And so when we look at it that way, again, it takes away our guilt, our blame, our judgment to see, wow, my child was so evolved and so intuitive that they knew this, they had fulfilled their mission and their exit point was here. So 3 types of souls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. 3 types of souls really has a bearing in so many ways on children transitioning when, they're not hitting what humans think is the normal lifespan. Okay. So how did let me just kind of enter into this. How did I come upon the understanding that some of us are souls that were designed to incarnate primarily on Earth? Some of us are souls that are not designed to primarily incarnate on Earth. Let me just add in kind of a perspective of reincarnation. So why do we reincarnate? Why do we keep coming back? Because we come into body to grow and evolve. Just like all over the world, in most countries, and certainly in the United States, children are required to be educated, usually until about the age of 16. So they have to go to school in some manner. Souls are the same thing. Souls are required to grow and evolve. And I always want to say, nothing is perfect. So on this human level, we're often taught there's perfection somewhere. Maybe it's in the divine, maybe it's at the soul level. Souls are conceived, and they're like your child was when your child was an infant. Could your child feed themselves as an infant? No. Could they walk as an infant? No. Could they speak and tell you exactly what they needed? No. They have to grow and evolve moment by moment, year by year, day by day, to become older. Or think about the difference between, the difference between a kindergartner or first grade student and a 3rd or 4th grade student. So if you're starting a child in school and they're a kindergartner or they're a 1st grader, you as the parent, one of the parents, or a guardian or caretaker, is required to walk them into the classroom. I'm bringing my child, they've got their lunch, I'm making sure they've got their lunch, and I'm walking them into the classroom because they're not yet old enough to, walk down 3 blocks to the street corner and get on the bus and make sure they don't leave their lunch on the bus and find their way to the classroom. If your child's a 3rd grader or 4th grader, maybe you're going to walk them down to the bus stop, but they just get off the bus and walk into school and go to school. Souls are that way too. So souls are growing and evolving lifetime to lifetime to lifetime. In my experience, and Sue pretty much said this a couple of minutes ago, when our children transition, I'd say almost always, if not always, they are highly evolved souls. they've come into body to teach us, but they've also come into body to complete some things. And we didn't talk about, Sue and I could talk all morning or all day or whatever. The soul, this is a quick piece, but the souls of our children or the souls of our loved ones and our higher selves, we have roles and responsibilities in the higher realm. Our higher self has, when I say jobs, I don't mean, oh, miserable jobs, I don't want to go to work again because it's just boring. No, the more evolved we are, the higher the level of responsibility is our role at the soul level. All of us in this room and listening today, our higher selves have responsibility in the higher realm. All of our children, all of our loved ones, they have roles and responsibilities. So that's a really important piece of understanding. Okay, so I started guiding regression, I don't know, 28 years ago or some such thing. When I studied, and I studied, I have books, but if you're fascinated with what I'm talking about, you might even want to go read the books of the man that was my mentor, who wrote the seminal books in the work of soul level regression, and his name was, he's on the other side, his name was Michael Newton, Dr. Michael Newton. So when Michael trained us, and then I co-taught with Michael for a number of years, but when Michael trained us, he trained us mostly in the understanding of souls that are designed to grow and evolve on Earth, and which means almost all of our lives as an Earth-based soul happen on Earth. And just so you don't mishear me, because a lot of times people do, I'm not saying earthbound. Earthbound is a different term. Spiritual people often use that term to mean a soul that's stuck. I honestly don't think that happens, but that is not what I'm talking about. So an earth-based soul, I'm an earth-based soul. That means almost all my lives have been here. So I become, I'll say, moderately comfortable with being on Earth in this body because I've just been here over and over and over, sort of ad nauseum, okay? And some of your children are Earth-based souls, okay? As is the case actually for Adam. Earl and I do know that. I'm not gonna say but, I don't like the word but, and some of your children, and I think this is common for children that transition, obviously before we expect them to transition. So there are two other kinds of souls, okay? One is what I call an interplanetary soul. I was given that term years ago in regression. Exchange that term with ET, starseed, it all means the same. There are souls that come into body on Earth, but they're not designed to function on Earth in the human body. They're designed to function somewhere in the greater universe, somewhere in the greater celestial realm, like a planet, a star system, interdimensional space, and a spacecraft. Now, every time I talk about this, I think, oh my gosh, 30-some years ago, if I thought I'd stand up here and talk about this, people would just laugh at me, like, what? What? It's true. It's true. So I've learned from client after client after client, these other two types of souls. An interplanetary soul comes to Earth for one basic reason. They become highly evolved where they come from. They become highly evolved, and it isn't always the places we think about, like Arcturus and the Pleiades and Orion's belt. There are places in the universe where advanced souls come from. The names would mean nothing to us. But interplanetary souls are these really wise individuals, and I think this will ring bells for some of you with your children. It's like, my child was wise at the age of 3. Or wise at the age of 6. I don't even know where they got some of the stuff they said. That's because you have a child that's a highly advanced soul. And so some souls come into body from somewhere out in the celestial realm. They don't have a lot of human experience. And so They're smart, they're wise, they're intuitive. But here, in these bodies and in this human reality, they're a little bit, like they don't have all the skills they need. And so they may be people with a lot of allergies. They may be people with a lot of health issues, autoimmune disorders. They might be on the autistic spectrum. And yet they're so wise. And that's why they come here. But sometimes they have difficulty staying 70 years, 80 years, 90 years. But they come to make their mark on this planet. And that's a really, it makes me emotional to say that. It's a really emotional piece. Then, third type of soul is a soul that comes from the angelic realm. So, whatever you want to call it, source, the divine, God, great spirit. There's some other beautiful terms. An Eastern term is the Manu. Other terms that I've studied Kabbalah quite a bit. We have some beautiful terms, Shekhinah, Hashem. There are souls that come to earth that are part of the angelic realm. The angelic realm serves source. The angelic realm are ambassadors of the energy of the divine, meaning human words don't do it justice. Love, compassion, non-judgment, just a heart as big as you can imagine. Angelic souls are very unique people. They are loving beyond loving, but they come here to Earth where we don't live on a planet that's purely love and compassion. We all know that. So that also may explain some of your children. We need angelic souls. I mean, we need all types of souls, but we need angelic souls because we don't have enough love and compassion in this human world. So think about your own children and play around with that.
Do you want to ask questions a little bit?
First of all, I'd just like to recognize that I think everyone understands that Sue is an angelic realm being. And so Linda was saying that obviously she is an earth-based soul, but it would be interesting to see a show of hands from people. And I also just kind of wanted to explain that the interplanetary a lot of times suffer with things like addiction because they can't adjust to this world. So they feel like they're out of place here, but they are here for a reason. So anyway, I was just going to see from a show of hands how many people perhaps think that their child is came here as obviously an interplanetary being. So yes, so we have about 5 here. Wonderful. And then how many people think that their children came from the angelic realm, which is very possible. Beautiful. So we have about 3, 4 maybe. And then, and obviously Cheryl has 2, so yeah, so you know that you have 2, one in each. And then obviously there's the third one, which is, let's see, I said earth-based. No, I didn't say earth-based. So earth-based is the last one. So this is someone who keeps evolving lifetime after lifetime and who really helps to keep things together while they're here. Would any of you think that your children are earth-based? Okay, great. So we have 2 showing hands.
Jean is earth-based.
And Jean is earth-based, which is wonderful. But yes, we could definitely take some questions. Does anybody have any questions about this beautiful presentation that they put together, either here or online? And I'm going to look online. So I see that there's people trying to get in as well.
Yeah, and ask questions, but also you're welcome to share why you think your child is earth-based or angelic or whatever.
I also want to say, don't be confused by the term angelic realm-based soul, thinking that that would mean your child or that person had to be an angel their whole lifetime, because that's not how it works. They came in from those higher realms, but then they landed here, and often they're so sensitive that they feel very beat up by this world. And so they may be depressed or anxious or sick or shy or any number of things, but you feel that there's something very heartfelt and pure about them. And that's how you get that sense that they are angelic souls.
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to say very quickly, we may lose power here. I just want to tell people because it's starting to become red. I was worried about that because I remembered everything but the cord this morning. So this has been very interesting, but we can continue the questions with the group if you all would like to, or maybe break into sharing groups as well. But I think that I'm going to say goodbye to everyone, and I hope that you had a wonderful time. Thank you so much for being with us, and thank Dr. Linda Backman as well as Reverend Sue Frederick. And I'll go ahead and just end the meeting before it dies.